It's time for the Double Stop with Brian Sword. Welcome to the Double Stop. I'm Brian Sword, and welcome to episode 100. We did it. We finally made it. Took a little longer than I thought, but we got here. Okay, this week, my special guest is Steve Thompson. My goodness, this guy has worked on a ton of huge, fantastic records. And not just one style, he mixes it up constantly. He'll work on Metallica, he'll work with Whitney Houston, he'll work on Aretha Franklin, he'll work on Korn, he'll work on Tesla. You can't peg him down in a particular style, and that's something you'll hear when we talk to him, that he's very, very particular in making sure that he does not end up being known for one particular sound. He's continuing to try to push the envelope, and he plays a bunch of samples on some of his newer stuff to see what he's up to now. It's some interesting stuff, very different than some of the earlier things he's worked on, but that's really what he does. He always tries to push forward. So I'm very curious of what you guys will think of the new music he's working on. So let's jump right into the interview. This week is the story of Steve Thompson.
With somebody who loves me, oh, I wanna dance with somebody. I wanna feel the heat with somebody.
I'm from New York. Born in Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island, New York. Musical family, that's an interesting question. My dad used to play violin. My brother played guitar. And I played shitty guitar. I mean, it was kind of funny. I was growing up with, you know who Jack Starr is?
No, I don't.
Jack Starr is an amazing guitar player. He's in the band Burning Star. We used to hang together growing up as kids. And he kind of taught me how to play guitar. It was kind of interesting because I made a trade from my cousin's drum set, which was an old Ludwig drum set. And I wound up trading it to Jack, and he gave me a 54 Les Paul Gold Top. And like a jerk, I sold it a long time ago. Should have kept it. But, I was playing it every day. And, I still play now and then, but I suck. I'll be the first one to admit it.
So in terms of your path into production, then were you ever seriously thinking about music, or did you take another route to get in?
Oh, I always thought music. I mean, was it something I thought my career was going to be based on? Absolutely not. I mean, even in high school, I was a big music aficionado, but I was actually going to be an architect, and I started taking classes in architecture. And I remember in the senior lounge, I was in charge of the music. I got out of high school, and I fooled around with guitar. I was in a couple of shit, bands. And I had a great record collection. It was kind of interesting. And I remember going to this club, Leone's in Deer Park, New York. And, this club, had bands like Twisted Sister and all these other bands playing. And I gave them the idea of putting a DJ system into their club. Now, you have to understand, in that day and time, the only clubs that really had DJs were gay clubs. And this was kind of like a rock club. And I said, when the band goes off, the energy is dead. So put a DJ in. And I get a phone call about a month or two later from the club that says, hey, we put a system in, be our DJ. And I said, well, I've never done that before, but I had a good record collection, so I kind of learned on the spot. And I started DJing. At the same time, I think I was working in a record store. I think Sam Goody's at the time. So my record collection got better and better. And I started DJing almost full time and, built up a lot of connections. And then probably around 1976, I got a job to compile this best of dance music record. It was called Disco Hustle. Hey, you got to start somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
But the funny part is that album sold, I put all the best dance artists together at that time, including Donna Summer and everything. And it was on Animate Roulette, and we wound up selling over 12 million copies.
Oh.
Yeah, and all I got, I think, was a $250 check and no credit on the record.
It's amazing how often when I talk to people, there's a similar story where kind of early on some kind of opportunity presents itself and that they're completely unqualified for, and they still kind of like, hell yeah, I can do that, and they dive in and figure it out, and it kind of gets them going.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I'm DJing full time, and then I worked in this club in Long Island called Barrymore's, and the club owner was Ron Radom, and he absolutely loved what I did. I mean, this guy was so cool. At the end of the night, I would make tapes of the shows that night, and at the end of the night, we'd have like a little group of people just listening to the show. And then I moved on. We lost touch, and I think around 1978, 79, I get a call from Ron. He's now working at TK Records. And it was a big, huge dance label at the time. So he says, I'd like to introduce you to the owner of the company. He goes, you're very talented. You should start working on some music. And I said, okay. Apprehensively. So what I wound up doing, I was working in this club called Uncle Sam's in Long Island, and a guy was working with Mike Arado. We decided to take one song of their label and do a mashup of it. Okay? And this again was dealing with records and tapes at the time. So we sent it to the company, and they loved it, and they started bringing us in the studio, which, we were so green, but we kind of knew what was going on. And I wound up doing a lot of dance records at that time, 78, 79. So everything was great. Things were going good. Did a lot of work for Casablanca and all these labels. And then, when the day disco died, I went back into clubs. And around the early 80s, I got a call. I started to get a new management team, which was Andy Kipnis and Mark Bevan at Advanced Alternative Media. And we really pursued the music thing. And I started getting a lot of work, with R&B artists like Stephanie Mills, Bart Kays, Cameo, trying to think, that whole line of things, and everything was great. And then I decided, this is the time New Wave was hitting, and I got a break to do work with Talk Talk on It's My Life and Such a Shame, and that became huge. So now I started getting calls from like David Bowie, and I worked with Ultravox, Missing Persons, Psychedelic Furs, Tears for Fears. And I started in that genre of music, and it was great. And I was getting my chops together. And what was interesting, when I was doing my dance records, I was looking for a great engineer that could do all types of music. And I went to a lot of people, and I finally worked with Mike Barbiero, who was working with John Luongo at the time. Great engineer. I mean, this guy, we went from like Johnny Mathis to Metallica together. Cool. And that was important to me because I've always been a chameleon in music and never wanted to stay in one type of music. And being a club DJ, you're always looking to start the new trend, not follow the old one. That has always been my precedent, when I did music. And and a lot of times when you do a successful record, they look and say, okay, that's what he does. And that's bullshit, When I was working with Korn, they go, all the bands like Korn wanted to come and work with me. I said, listen, I've done that before. Give me something new and exciting. So anyway, I had a great management team behind me, and we started doing a lot of these records. They were going number one, this and that. And then I started into the pop field, working with Whitney Houston, Madonna, Earth, Wind and Fire, just a ton of pop artists, Expose. And I know this sounds stupid and silly, but I was so bored. Everything was going number one. And I was so and I told my manager, listen, I need to do some rock stuff or I'm gonna just lose it. So we got, I'm sure how I got a hold of Geffen, but Tom Zutaut at Geffen Records says, hey, I got this band I want you to work with. And it was called City Kid, which now is their name was Tesla.
Yeah, right.
And I said, great, went to go see the band with Michael, and we loved them. So we wound up producing them. We produced their first 3 albums, and they were all multi-platinum. It's a great band. I love the band. They, at the time, hair bands were big. I never considered them a hair band because they knew how to fight,
And they're still great.
Yeah, they are. They're doing great, which is great. And then Zutaut, in the middle of this project, and we were so burnt because we worked on 50 million things at once, Zutaut starts giving me the demos to Guns N' Roses. And I fucking love this band. I mean, I heard the demos and everything like that. I remember when I first heard the demo of Welcome to the Jungle, I said, this band's going to be huge. But the thing is, Zutat wanted us to work on it right away, and we were so friggin' burned. I said, can't you wait a little bit? He said, no, I can't. So I wound up saying, well, why don't you find somebody to produce it, and we'll mix it for you. So that's how that worked. And, obviously they got Mike Klink to do it, and we did the mixing in New York at Media Sound Studios, which was great because no computers at the time. It was an old analog board. And it was just basically, you create dynamics by using your hands, which I loved. And I love mixing that way. Obviously, a lot of people today mix in the box, and that's fine. But, I could do it a lot quicker on a console, where somebody's going to overanalyze something in the box. They say, well, should we bring this guitar up like 3/4 of a dB? I say, fuck that, man. Just feel it, close your eyes and feel it.
When I talked to Micaiah Ryan, who worked on some of the engineering on the record of Guns N' Roses, he said there was a strategy there to try to pull in people with a bunch of different influences, like a pop producer, and I think he said it was a dance mixer. But do you think, from your perspective, was that the strategy you saw as well, to pull in all these different influences to work with the band and create something, a bit of a new sound, or did it just kind of happen that way?
Well, it was kind of interesting. Just to go off side point here, the reason why Metallica hired us is because of the work we did with Madonna. Go figure, right?
Right, yeah.
And another thing is, I remember when I was doing a lot of hip-hop artists, I wound up working with Public Enemy, and Hank Shockley, one of the producers of Public Enemy, loved my work he said, the bass drum sound you got in Shout Tears for Fears was absolutely amazing. The whole thing is, as far as influencing you, when I work on an artist, is I've worked on every genre of music. That doesn't mean I'm going to put, with Guns N' Roses, a 4 on the floor in programming. Guns N' Roses, my thing was to make it what the band was, which was dangerous, in your face, high energy, and dynamic. That was the game plan. And I remember we were working on the record. Slash, Axl, and Izzy were in the sessions, and Tom Zutat. And I remember the first song we were working on was It's So Easy. And it was kind of interesting. When those guitars kick in, I decided to slam them on 11, just to fuck with it, and it's just like, it pushed you back when you heard it on big monitors. And it was an old commercial on Memorex tape where they have this guy sitting in a chair and the hair blows back. I think that's what Slash was when he heard the mix.
Yeah, right.
I think we blew 4 sets of speakers on playback, so I knew the mix was right, so we didn't want to fuck with it.
And it's interesting because, like, I just listened recently to one of the Use Your Illusions records, and it was the first thing I noticed was the danger wasn't there. In hindsight, because I hadn't listened to it in a long time, compared to the debut. Like, it was a very different sound, I think.
Well, you have to understand, Axl wanted to evolve. He was getting into more lusher productions, keys, strings. November Rain was on the original demos for the first album, Appetite. And we went with Sweet Child of Mine. November Rain wasn't quite ready then, and I think it was a good thing. And obviously, it came out on Use Your Illusion. What was kind of interesting about, again, Axl wanted to grow more than just Appetite. The band would have been happy just to do another Appetite record, but Axl wanted to evolve. And I can't say as I blame him, As an artist, you want to evolve. I remember getting a phone call, which is kind of funny. We were actually producing Tesla's second record at the time, and I get a call from Ed Rosenblatt. Okay, Steve, Use Your Illusion's ready, man. Drop what you're doing. Let's go and start this. And I said, guys, we're in the middle of Tesla here. Why don't you call Bernstein and Mensch up and tell them, hey, you want to put this on hold for a little bit, but I can't just stop this now.
Yeah, right.
I think they wanted me to be the fall guy. And he goes, Tesla who? And I said, okay, I'm not going to win this one, Obviously we wanted to do it, but at the same time, there is integrity to what I do. If I'm if I'm commissioned to do a project, I mean, I've done this my whole career. I mean, they wanted me to produce the first Linkin Park record, but I was with another artist at the time, and I had to pass. I didn't want to. Same with Jane's Addiction. I mean, and everything like this, and it's kind of frustrating because I really want to work on those projects, but the problem is these companies want them yesterday, and they hold on to them until tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Now, if you don't mind, I'm curious if we could jump back a second because I'm curious about how you go from a DJ to being comfortable in a studio. Like, where's the learning curve? Did somebody take you under their wing, or how did that happen?
Well, I was self-taught, to tell you the truth. And again, being a shit-ass guitar player, I had some music ability. I didn't know how to read music. Mike Barbiere was really good in teaching me, music, And I learned on the fly, but I was always great to be able to communicate with musicians. And I've always felt very good at doing arrangements. I've always felt really good finding the right key for the band, the right tempo. And I love taking apart songs, when I felt, the more I worked with, the better off it came. It was kind of interesting. I was working with the Stones at the time. We did Harlem Shuffle, did Dancing in the Streets, and producing a band, Phantom Rocker and Slick. Slim Jim and Lee Rocker from Stray Cats formed with Earl Slick, who played with Bowie and you name it, John Lennon, everything great. And I love Earl Slick. I used to hire him a lot for a guitar player. So they knew I was working with the Stones, and Earl Slick's biggest dream was to be the Ron Wood. He wanted to be in the Stones so bad. And so Slick says, hey, anyway, we can get Keith Richardson to come to do a guitar solo or something on one of our songs. And I was working with Mick and everybody. I said, sure, let me ask him. So it was kind of interesting. Mick was having a birthday party at the Palladium and the Michael Todd Room, private party. And I went there. It was like a who's who there. It's like an Andy Warhol party. I think that's the only way I could describe it. He was dating Jerry Hall at the time. She was like 6 months pregnant wearing a wedding dress. I was hanging out with Jack Nicholson and Mick at the bar, and then I meet up with Keith and Woody in the men's room. And I said, hey, Keith, I'm doing a session now. Would you mind coming in and playing on this? And he agreed to it. I said, great. So I think it was the next day or something like that. He comes in and laid out the song to him. I says, here's the song, put your personality on it, to it, And I'm in the main record room that I believe is the Media Sound, big, huge room. Set up the monitors out there so you can hear the track. Sets everything up. And I says, and he starts asking for direction. And I says, Keith, I'm not, you've done this all the time. I says, here's like 16 bars. Go off on it. And he says, well, can you help me out here? So I wound up playing air guitar, singing him notes while he's playing the part. And everybody's like astonished. I said, well, here I am playing air guitar with Keith Richards when I know shit. And he it's one thing about Keith. He likes to work with people and likes that, thing happening with you, So I wish we could have filmed that. That was like priceless. So we finally got the part. So, I've always been very comfortable with musicians and singers, and my philosophy about singing, again, working from, a singer like Whitney Houston to Jonathan Davis from Korn, it's kind of different. Okay. And I think, what I've learned is, with pop music, it is on the slick side. And a lot of times notes are very important to be perfect. Okay. Whitney can pull it off. But when you got a guy like Jonathan, we're sitting down writing lyrics for Follow the Leader. I said, Jonathan, the most important part, how to tackle is vocally. I want people to believe what you're writing. I want you to close your eyes. I don't care about perfect pitch. I want to hear vulnerability. I want to hear dynamics. I want you to pour your heart and soul into these lyrics. And Jonathan was so cool. He would, after a performance, he would literally pass out after the performance. That's how much energy he put into it. And that's great. That's important to me because, there needs to be a human aspect in singing. You go to see Merkin Idol and all these X Factors and everything like that. they're looking at perfect pitch, but to me, it's robots. Okay, if you put autotune on Kurt Cobain, you'd be laughed out. Even with artists, I've worked with Aretha Franklin. I mean, how much better you get than that? But that's the whole thing in a nutshell. I think it's a lot of music today has lost that human quality, and I think that's important.
Well, for me personally, it's almost more important to have a distinct, unique vocal than singing ability. You know what I mean? Like those voices you hear and you know it, who it is, even if they're not technically the best singer in the world.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. When I deal with my production, so a lot of times you get hired from certain artists you've worked with, but that doesn't mean I'm going to do what I did with band X to band Y. I'm going to take the artists I work with and make the best record they've ever made and make it stand out from everything. But that's not going to say I'm going to copy what I did before, because to me, it's always a new challenge. I'll make it great. That's to me, how I survive, because I would be bored shitless if I did the same shit all the time. I mean, I'm writing songs now. I wrote this song called Revolution. I'm going to play you a little bit of the instrumental I came up with.
Okay, cool.
And basically, I'm marrying EDM with rock. And I wanted to do that for a long time because I think rock needs to evolve. And it just kind of stayed the same. And I think it's important to change up a little bit. Hold on a second. I'll just play a little bit of the instrumental. That's all you're getting.
That's awesome.
No, it's just I'm writing lyrics. This is a band I'm working with right now called the Snuffs from Prague, and I've written all the songs to them. And I work with a program I work with a lot, Damien, and we put this music together, and I just want something that had energy, exciting, and rock and danceability at the same time. I noticed that Trent Reznor just put out a new record. I just heard a single, and it's kind of like he's back to being old Nine Inch Nails a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
having that industrial thing. But this is going to take rock to the next level, which is really cool in my book. It's a young band out of Prague. They were kind of compared to Malmsteen, I think, wrongly, because I think the singer has more of a voice almost like Jonathan from Korn. It kind of has that style a little bit,
Yeah, right.
But I'm writing the lyrics, wrote the music with Damien, and it's coming out great.
Sadly, I've been singing for a while, but it seems like we're at that point where something new needs to happen for rock. It's almost like the kind of early 90s where it's kind of you're waiting for the next thing. It feels kind of stale, I think, in terms of what's popular. Do you agree with that?
Well, I've done this my whole career. I mean, when we did Guns N' Roses, that's where rock needed to be in that
Oh yeah.
place. Early 90s, I did Soundgarden. That's where that rock needed to be in that time and place. Then I did Butthole Surfers. Alternative was big. And then, in the late 90s, NSYNC and Backstreet Boys were dominating the charts. And I did a band called Korn, and we redesigned rock again.
Yeah.
Which brought, bands like Deftones, Head PE, and it brought that again. Now it's my job again to redesign rock, which I'm all in favor of doing. That's what I'm doing right now, and it's going to be sick. But to me, it's important. It's always great to have influence, but my head has always been in the future. I don't look behind me. What I did 30 years ago is irrelevant to me. What I did a year ago is irrelevant to me. ever want to stay safe. I always want to make music for today's and tomorrow's generation. I don't want to get stuck in an era of music. I think that sucks. And, I've always been very good at adapting to new trends and actually starting new trends. That's what I do. It's about being a visionary.
And keeps it from being typecast into a certain style, as you mentioned before.
Oh, they can't typecast me. They look at my discography and they go, what the fuck? Yeah.
That's pretty much what I did as I went through it, because I knew a bunch of it, and I was like, wow. Now, one thing I did hear for the first time was your 12-inch remix of the Duran Duran, A View to a Kill, which I had not heard before, which I heard on there. How did you get involved with that? And now, in the past, they had always done their night versions of songs, which were complete re-records. Is that what this is, or is this was this a remix with a bunch of new sounds added in?
Again, I was working with a band called Bluey Psalm, which are managed by the Bauer Brothers, and Bauer Brothers managed Duran Duran. So we got together and we went to Paris to work with Duran on a couple of songs. One was View to a Kill. And we're in Paris at the studio in the La Grande Amie shopping mall. And I had the most amazing time. The whole band was in there. They was doing stuff in one room, and they gave us these tracks to remix. So with A View to a Kill, I think I would have Nick Rhodes come and do some overdubs and everything like that. And we wound up doing that mix. And then we were doing 50 million things at the time. I said, why didn't this ever come out? And, for the life of me, I couldn't understand why it didn't come out.
Yeah.
And I think one of the two guys in the band said, well, hey, didn't feel like it, whatever. I said, okay. But I said to myself, I think it's worthy. Now I'm getting so much stuff online. Wow, great mix, great mix. I had to actually, I was looking for my studio copy. I couldn't find it. And somebody was gracious enough. I had a Duran Duran fan club who actually printed out a CD of my mix.
Oh, wow.
And so I had them send me a couple of copies, or I was going to report them. And no, but I think it sounds great. It was good. I thought it kept the integrity of the original song, and made it more accessible for an extended mix. I mean, I'm a James Bond freak. It's kind of funny. On my wall of shame in one of my rooms in my house, I have a signed picture of every person who ever played James Bond.
Oh, wow.
Singly. Also have Ursula Andress, Dr. No, all the evil guys. What was that guy, Lurch? I don't call him Lurch, but the guy with the gold teeth.
Oh, boy.
Jaws. That's it.
Yeah.
I got all that. So, I mean,
that's awesome.
To be associated with James Bond movie, how freaking cool was that?
And I love the mix in that you can really clearly hear the bass line for the first time, which is not something you could really. It's the bass line was slightly buried in the original mix, and this one I could really hear what he was doing, which is awesome.
Yeah, well, I think that's our dance background. I come from an R&B school, so I think it's important to have the foundation banging.
Another band you mentioned recently was working with Soundgarden, and sadly we just lost Chris. Do you have any memories of how you came to work with them as a new band? I think that was their first major label record, and how was that experience to work with that band?
First of all, I'm still devastated by the passing of Chris. I mean, I've worked with a lot of amazing artists, and the ones that affect me the most were David Bowie, because I worked with him, and David Bowie's the reason why I got in the music industry. That, to this day, devastates me. Prince, I worked with Prince. That devastates me. Chris, I had no idea and did not expect it. Because the reason, in the late 80s, I was getting so bored and disinterested in the rock music that was coming out. It was just like hairband after hairband was coming to me, and I told my manager, I said, if this is the best we can get, I'm out of here. I hated it. I hated it all. I get a call from Steve Rabowski from A&M Records, and Steve goes, hey, how's it going? I said, great, Steve. What's going on? Steve is the one who actually gave me the project to do Talk and David Bowie, so I love the guy, He said, well, I just signed a new band, and I wonder if you'd work with them. I said, great, who are they? Now you have to understand, my wife's from Seattle. I was in Seattle right as Pearl Jam got signed and hung out with them, and I heard him in the club, and Eddie Vedder calling, hi, I'm Eddie Vedder, real nice. everything like that. And I said, dude, I love your band, man. I'd love to get you signed. He said, well, we just signed. I said, great. So getting back to Soundgarden, Steve says, yeah, we just signed this band Soundgarden. I said, cool. I didn't hear of them before. So Steve sent me the roughs and everything like that. I said, wow, this guy's fucking amazing. This band's amazing. Reminds me a little bit of Ozzy a little bit. And it was just felt right to me at that point. So I said, sure, I'd love to work with them. So it was kind of interesting. We were doing the project in New York City. I don't think the band was at the sessions at the time. And we were doing all this mixing, getting this, everything like that. And Chris is an anal wart when it comes to studio shit. I mean, this guy is pretty adamant what he wants. And I love that for him, you know? It could be a push and pull thing and everything like that, but you respect that. I remember we recalled a bunch of different mixes, everything like that. And I just got married. I'm off on my honeymoon, okay? I'm with my wife. We're in the Caribbean. We rented a yacht and went island hopping for 2 weeks. I get a call from my manager. Chris would like you to come back and recall a couple of his mixes. I said, fuck you. Have my I'm on my honeymoon. But I love Chris. I love the band. I just love the energy. You know, we hung out together. I remember that I think that they played the Ritz or something like that. They come in a beat-up white van, almost, you know, come out of the van like Spicoli did in that movie. You know? And they rocked it. I loved Chris, you know, and I was absolutely shocked that he even had a drug thing, you know. He's always been a control freak. I'd never seen that side of him. Same with Prince. You know, Prince was like almost like a vegan, very careful what he put in his body. And then when Chris passed on, I said, wow, that to me was shocking, absolutely shocking. But again, I have nothing but great things to say about Soundgarden. Great band. And I'll give you one funny story. I'm working with Ozzy at the time, doing that No More Tears record. That's a thing. And Chris found out about it. Chris comes to me and says, listen, I wrote these songs I think would be great for Ozzy. Is there any way you can get it to him? I said, sure I can. So I get the songs to Ozzy. Ozzy listens to him. He goes, what the fuck do I want to do these? I did this shit 20 years ago. And I thought they were great songs. And how did I tell Chris Cornell, well, he's like, you know, well, not really into them. I thought they were great songs. But, you know, that was what Ozzy was thinking at the time.
You know, you talk about hair bands, and you know, you can't say that you fully didn't work with them.
Oh, no.
But what was some of the ones, like say you worked with Dokken back for the Attack? What was it about that band that drew you in for it?
I love Lynch's guitar playing. I don't really consider them a hair band either. I think they're pretty good musicians. The kind of interesting thing is when we're mixing the record, you couldn't have George or Don in the same room together.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting, you know. So we're on the phone with them, we're sending them stuff, and we're on the phone with Don and George, and they both have their different views of everything. That was quite interesting, but it turned out to be their biggest selling record, so I can't say it sucked. Another band I had a lot of respect for was Cinderella. They were considered a hair band, but Tom Kiefer's an amazing motherfucking musician.
Oh, yeah.
Great guitar player, great voice and everything. I mean, we worked on the Long Cold Winter album and the next one after that. Great album, you know. You know, worked with Alice Cooper on the Poison record, and I loved Alice. I mean, we got along great. I mean, we do that album up in Bearsville Studios. We could work till 4 a.m, and he'd drag my ass on a golf course at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
And
that was a huge comeback for him, that record.
Yeah, Desmond Child wrote a lot of the songs on that. And it was just great to be with. You know, we had a lot of fun doing it, and I'm very happy the way that album came out.
When you mentioned Cinderella, I still don't understand how they pulled it off, because the first record had a bit more depth, but it was much more in the hair metal style. It was much more of its time. And then they somehow get the record label to agree to do a bluesy album to follow it up. Like, how is that? It didn't seem like they had enough clout at that time to change their style so drastically and have the record label go, okay.
Well, there's a lot of, for instance, like, you know, why didn't Guns N' Roses do another Appetite for Destruction? Why did they use Your Illusion? Same thing. Tom Kiefer was brought up on the blues. He had a very strong background. It's like Zakk Wylde. Here's a great example. Zakk Wylde plays with Ozzy, okay, ripping, shredding, everything like that. But he's a Southern blues guy. He goes and plays on the road with Allman Brothers, okay? That's the same with Kiefer. He was able to explore his roots by doing that, and I thought he did it quite well, you know? Artists always like to evolve, and if you're allowed to do that, why not? Okay? You know, today in the day and age, obviously, you know, you get your 5 minutes of fame. If you don't hit on your first record, gone, even the first single, next. You know, back in the day, you had at least 3 or 4 records to make before you had to prove yourself. But it is what it is.
For the Metallica record, obviously, I'm sure you've been asked in every interview about the mix and the bass.
Next.
Yeah. What I'm curious is from a different angle is when you're working with a band who's giving you direction that may not be necessarily what you want to do, how do you handle that situation to get what you want and make them happy as well?
Well, I wanted to leave that project, to be honest with you. You know, obviously it's out there. You know, I've done this interview 50 million times. I'll say it one more time. You know, Metallica's a band I just fucking loved. I mean, that to me I loved the energy of that band at that time. It was Cliff Bernstein and Peter Mensch again brought us to Metallica, and I fucking loved it. And, you know, even before I heard the demos or the music, I said, okay, I'm going to make Master Puppets sound weak compared to, you know, make, you know, And Justice for All sound, you know, better than Master Puppets. Okay, that was my goal.
Of course.
And we're in the studio up in Bearsville. They're playing the Monsters of Rock tour, so Lars and James would fly in now and then to check on everything. And I remember when we first started the sessions, Lars comes in with a EQ, pictures of EQ setup, how he wanted his drums to sound, every drum. So I told Michael Barbier, I said, Michael, why don't you work with Lars on the drum sound, what he wants, and then when you're done with that, let me know. And so they're spending hours and hours. They finally said, okay, we got the drums the way Lars wants. Okay. And I go in the room, chase everybody out. So I'm putting everything up, and I'm listening to this drum sound. I said, this drum sound sounds like ass. So I wound up re-cueing everything like that, putting guitars up, putting the bass up. Now, the bass was a great marriage between Hetfield's rhythms and what Jason did on the bottom. It was a great marriage between the two. Sounded great, you know? And again, coming from an R&B background, you're not going to bury the bass.
Exactly.
It doesn't compute. So I bring, you know, the bass up, put everything up and everything like that. Lars comes walking in, listens to the mix. He listens to about 10 seconds. He says, shut it off. And, you know, I think, again, this is 1988 maybe? I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember everything that happened. And he shuts us, and Lars goes to me. He says, what happened to my drum sound? And I basically told him, like, you was serious? Probably something like that. So I had to wind up getting the drum sound that he wanted, which, you know, I didn't agree with, okay? So now the bass, okay, yeah, great bass part, man. Works really good with the guitars. I want you to take that bass down in the mix where you barely audibly can hear it. This is Lawrence, and I had James behind me. And I said, you serious? So I did that. He said, now drop it down another 5 to 10 dB.
Eesh.
And I turned around and looked at James for some support here, and James kind of threw up his hands. So after that, I called up my manager in Bernstein and Mensch, and I said, guys, I fucking love this band, okay? And obviously, at the end of the day, it's their record. They got to do what they're doing, okay? But what they're making me do, I got to put my name on this, and this sucks, okay? I want to actually walk off this record. That's how bad I felt about it. And Bernstein and Mensch and my manager talked me into staying and doing the mix. And the only thing I regret not doing, because, again, we have 5 other projects that do right after that, is not spending a week by myself, at least mixing it the way I heard it just for myself.
Yeah, right.
But at the end of the day, if a band, and this is what the old saying is, okay, it's their record, okay? Even though you're a part of it, at the end of the day, it's their record. If they are that strong about convictions that, you got to give it up to them. You have to. I mean, I can fight and do this and that, but it's their record. They're going to have judgment over even what I say. And you have to respect that, But it was kind of funny because when Metallica got elected to the Hall of Fame, they flew me in, which I thought was amazing. And I remember Lars coming up to him, hanging out with him and his kids. He says, Steve, he goes to me, what happened to the bass and Justice? And I just throw up my hands and say, I give up.
Oh, it's nice to get thrown under the bus 30 years later.
That's part of my life, but that's, I don't mind. It is what it is.
Now, I have a lot of guitar players that listen to my show, so I have to ask you about Malmsteen, who is another big personality. How was your experiences working with him?
Well, I thought after working with Yoko Ono, working on the John Lennon project, that would be the most difficult person to ever work with. I was proven wrong. All right, first of all, Yngwie, I have the utmost respect for Yngwie. Great player, this and that. How can I put this? Joe Lynn Turner was a friend of mine, and Joe obviously sang on the record. And Yngwie would kind of tell me, well, I did this, I played this, I arranged that. Basically, he did everything. People just happened to be there, but he did everything. It's okay. Of an ego. And loved his playing. And I got pissed off at him one day. And I said, Yngwie, when are you going to stop playing scales? And when are you going to play with some soul? And then he goes back, I have more soul in my one finger than... I understand, we hung out a lot together with him and his girlfriend, me and my wife. Okay, so it's more than the studio thing. Hung out with him. Guy's got amazing ego, but you kind of expect that with a gifted musician, okay? Kind of comes with the territory, unfortunate times. It was difficult. He was great until he started partying, and then things would go south.
But that ego is also what keeps a crowd in the palm of his hand when he's performing, because I've been to a show and people love him.
Oh, he's great. He's amazing.
He's amazing.
I mean, I love hanging out with him, obviously, Hey, everything's not going to go smooth all the time, but I don't regret working with him. I think he's great, Very talented. I mean, again, David Bowie turned me on to classical music back in the early days, and I remember seeing Clockwork Orange for the first time, and that just blew me away. And I think my sensibility is very classically trained, about dynamics and everything. I was working with this one singer who was an opera singer, and 5 octaves, amazing singer. And she wanted to do a rock record. And I agreed to do it, so we picked a couple of covers. And should I play you a little bit?
Sure.
Do I dare? Okay. Hold on a second. Patrizia from Canada. All right. I'm not going to say who this song is. You tell me when you hear it. Okay. I had 3 days to do this record, top to bottom. Wound up rearranging a lot of songs, writing parts, and everything like that. I'm not going to tell you what the song is, but you'll get it soon.
look you in the eyes. You're just like an angel. Your skin makes me cry. You float like a feather in a beautiful world. I wish I was special, so very special. But I'm a creep. What the hell am I
You get the idea?
Yeah, I hear that, and I'm like, put that in a movie right now, in a soundtrack.
Here's the deal. Patrizia is an amazing artist, but I said, you know what? A lot of opera singers, they want to do that vibrato. And I said, you know what? Let's start off seductive. I'm going to play you a part of the song where I let it go off on, okay? I'll just play a little bit from here.
Sure.
Now watch what happens after this, okay?
You're so very special. I wish I was special, but I'm a creep. I'm a dude. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here.
See, I love doing dynamics, and I figured I had so much room to play with on this song, so we went off.
Did you ever? That's all over. That's amazing.
Oh, it's great. We did Zombie, too. We also did a song, Beethoven's Sonata, which is the most sickest. And again, the sonata was just on a piano. There was never any strings, lyrics, or anything like that. I did strings. We did lyrics on it. And it starts off classical, goes to Metallica, then to Rage Against the Machine.
Perfect.
It is so friggin' I'll play just a couple of quick bits and pieces. I'll play each section. It's hysterical, and I absolutely loved it. Hold on, let me see if I can find it real quick. We wound up calling the song My Beloved. Okay, I'll just play a little bit of the intro and stuff like that.
Do not leave.
you get the idea of that. I mean, it's
Yep.
absolutely gorgeous. Okay,
Yeah.
then
Again, cinematic.
very cinematic. Now I did a middle eight instrumental where I wrote the string parts, and watch what it does. It's like almost like Night on a Bold Mountain. All right, this goes on for a little bit. Hold on. Here. All right, you hear that part, right?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Now I did unison guitar parts to work with the vocals. Watch this. Now, what I wanted to do for a grand finale is change up the time signature. Watch what happens. Is that sick?
Yeah, I wouldn't have seen that coming.
You know what's kind of interesting is a couple of times I really felt the presence of, like, I felt Beethoven's presence in the studio when I did this, and I feel like he's communicating to me, go for it, go off. It's like when I worked on John Lennon's music, and after he passed on, I felt his presence in the studio as well. It's weird, but it was kind of sick.
And you said you did this quite fast in the studio, this record?
I had like 3 days, yeah. I mean, I wrote a couple of songs real quick, and I love the record. I mean, Patrice is a great artist, you know. We also did Zombie, remember that, by the Cranberries?
Yeah.
I'll play a little bit of that real quick. You get the idea.
Yeah. I really like what you did with your vocals there.
Yeah, I mean, it's very cinematic, you know. I really love that. And there was one of this artist from Canada. One of the artists they work in Reno. This was years back, but it's one of my favorite songs I've ever produced. It's kind of interesting. He had a very monotonic voice, okay? So I decided to be like Phil Spector and did this wall of sound production, okay? And I don't know, I just get goosebumps when I hear it. It's a song called Still. And I really love manipulating. I'll play, is it okay? Play a little bit of
Great.
This one I have to kind of play through because I kind of got David Gilmour is one of my favorite guitar players, and I kind of basically did a little tribute to him by the guitar player I used in the band. But check this out. It's a song called Still.
2 a.m. comes creeping through the window.
Now understand, I didn't use Pro Tools with this band, so you're gonna. These are performances, and I did overdubs on top of that. You know, before people start fucking up music. Okay.
2 a.m. comes creeping through the window. Slowly then, the shadows seem to understand. Why'd you have to leave that me? You said the words I did not say. At least not till the
Can you hear that okay?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, wait till you hear what this does. You're going to love it.
there's not much more I can do. I try my best to what I wanna do. treating me this way? I had so much to say. How could you just decide that it would not survive? I wanted more than this. I wanted more than forever. Could I
You get the idea.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, you gotta hear like real speakers. It's just it's interesting, like guitar tones. I consider myself an aficionado, and I remember hanging out with Billy Corgan in the '90s. How he got that oversaturated sound. I kind of mimicked that, and I'm also a big fan of the Deftones guitar sounds as well. So I take a lot of pride in time. I have all my guitars at home, my amps. I love Bogner Upashals. I have pedals, great amps and everything like that. It was interesting. My favorite guitar I have is a Les Paul Custom. When I worked at Ozzy, Gibson gave it to me. And I wound up trying 50 million pickups in Les Pauls because I always find that Les Pauls have kind of a dull sound. So I wound up putting Seymour Duncan distortion pickups in this Les Paul, and it sounds fucking amazing. And so that was that.
Obviously, with a DJing background, you're not afraid of technology, and as throughout your career, as the technology has changed from tape to digital, how did you feel about that transition?
Absolutely love it because I always hated working with tape because the hiss factor and how it wears off. I got into digital when I knew that I can apply analog technology to digital technology. I remember I worked on one of the first Pro Tools systems where I think it was Korn, where I had the Pro Tools engineer sit in the closet, told him what I wanted, and don't come out until you give it to me. And I've always felt you have to use technology as a tool, not as a performer. Okay? That's rule number one. And it's very easy to get caught in a studio and look at a fucking screen, and if it's not lined up properly, then it's wrong, or the notes aren't perfect, it's wrong. You have to bypass that. And it's very important. I'm in a studio. I make sure I have a Pro Tools engineer because, I'm a console guy. I mean, I'm a physical producer. I'm always hands-on everything, okay? Whether it be arrangements, I'm on the console, sound, and everything. But I don't want to look at a screen. Again, depends the type of music I'm working on. That dictates how I'm going to approach it. And it's very important to leave vulnerability in, like with rock music is a good example. Leave those bad notes. If it's an attitude, leave it. Okay? It's very easy to polish something. It's very hard to leave mistakes in for a reason. It's like when I remember when Lars, how he does his drum tracks back in the day. There'd be 5 million tape edits in the multi-track. And, he was very clinical. Well, maybe the verse will be at 116 and maybe the B verse will be 116 and a half BPM. All right. Okay. So he'll roadmap that. Where my feeling is, when I tell a band, obviously we use click tracks or whatever, but I like a song to breathe. Okay. If you want the chorus to, speed up a little, that's fine. But if you beat map something like that, say hypothetically you're at 116, the B verse is maybe 118, and the chorus is 122. Okay, if you roadmap that out, how do you get back to 116 and feel good? You don't roadmap it. You just have the the band do a natural retard or something like that, where it feels more natural, and that's always been my philosophy. You know, it's all about pre-production. I'm a massive pre-production guy. I mean, I spent 2 months in pre-production with Korn, working on the songs and rewriting and everything like that. And I said to the band, well, how do you guys write songs? Fieldy plays a bass line. I said, cool. How else do you write songs? Fieldy plays a bass line. I said, okay, we're going to change it up a little bit, guys. Jonathan, write lyrics. Head Monkey, come up with guitar riffs. David, the drummer, come up with drum grooves. I even brought one of Dr. Dre's programs in just to change up the writing style. Okay? And the first song we worked on was Freak on a Leash. I tore that whole song apart. And I think it's important to try things, experiment. And in this day and age, what I love about digital is instead of wasting a lot of money in the studio, I could do a lot of stuff online with bands. We can go back and forth on arrangements, I can have them demo up stuff. So at a point when we're ready to go in the studio, we know what we're doing, And this day and age about, the cost factor, it's just so much cost efficient. But at the same time, I want this shit to be great, okay? I mean, my bar is set very high, a lot higher than even record companies are, but that's me. Because, my whole career, I've managed to set a lot of trends, and I want to keep doing that, and I don't want to settle. I mean, say hypothetically, one of my favorite bands out there today is the Struts. I love them. That kid's a star. That's a band I'd love to work with. I heard they're working with Butch Walker now, but
right.
I don't know if you heard of them.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them and Bush. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely think this singer is a star. One of the best things I've heard in rock, and obviously he is Freddie Mercury influenced. No problem with that at all. I just love it, But that's in a nutshell. How many rock bands that are out there? By the way, I have to say one thing. I'm very saddened to see David Z from Adrenaline Mob pass away from that accident. And I've been in touch with the band. We were going to work together, this and that. And it's so devastating what's going on. I'm still waiting to hear update information on the rest of the guys. But David's just gone way too soon. Great guy, and very sad to see shit like that happen, man. And it's heart wrenching.
Yeah, we're all keeping an eye out because I know some of the other band members are definitely hospitalized, and it hasn't come out how serious it is, but there's definitely more coming from that story. It's awful.
I know. It's just it's so sad. But let's move on.
Yeah. So as we wrap things up, you've been very generous with your time. In terms of today, you've played a lot of what you're working on now, and you're definitely looking forward. It seems that you're very focused on new bands and discovering new bands. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yes, definitely. But, the whole thing is, if I'm going to do rock, I want to do something different, okay? And again, it doesn't have to be EDM. I'll just play one other thing. This is in demo shape. I wrote a song called You Are Deleted. I figured with social media, this is a guide vocal. It's not very, but you'll get an idea. This is a song I wrote lyrically and musically.
Are deleted.
idea.
Yeah. And then what would your plans be for a song like that?
Well, I wrote the lyrics. Here's, you're going to love this. This is verse 1. Your hot profile sucked me right in. Everything was just great till we met face to face. Great disgrace, huge shock. I found out your package is way bigger than my cock. Okay, so obviously, what you meet online is not exactly what you get when real.
Yeah.
Second verse. You posted views for the world to see. You expose yourself, now I have to leave. Third verse. Self-esteem lower than hell. Your lust for attention makes me uncomfortably numb. I mean, basically, it's basically writing about social media, how distorted you could be and how so wrapped up you are, but it's not about real life. That's why I wanted to write. And everybody likes to delete people, so I figured it'd be great. With the song Revolution I played earlier, Revolution is a work in progress. Let me just see what I got lyrically here. Polluted air in your lungs, feel a cancer growing inside. What does it take to stop the polluters now? Follow the money, prime motivation, our future. Selfish, sadistic, power crazy ones ruling, ruining, destroying our lives. Basically how big governments are fucking up our environment for money gain, where these big corporations like Monsanto and everything are polluting everything, where dictators like Kim Dumb Fuck and all these people just ruining people's lives. So it's basically a revolution where the kids say they have to wake up and stop talking about it and do something about it because they are our future. And I'm just trying to make this, trying to make music for today. You know what I mean? And lyrically, because lyrics are so important. I keep telling people, the Beatles wrote a huge massive hit called "She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah." If you wrote a song like that today, they would laugh you out just the lyric content. It's very important when you're writing lyrics. Is if you know what your market is. If you're gonna write for kids, you better talk like them. Okay, you better use the language they use, or don't bother. And that's why I think a lot of people make mistakes. I never grew up. I'm still 16, so it's very easy for me to write lyrics like this.
And there you have it. That was Steve Thompson. Hope you guys enjoyed it. It was really interesting hearing him talk about the Guns N' Roses stuff and possibly working on Use Your Illusions if things had worked out. It's interesting because he still really maintains that Guns N' Roses connection. He even still has the same manager, Doug Goldstein. This weekend I'm off to the Nashville Rockin' Pod Expo. Looking forward to hopefully meeting some listeners there and getting to meet some of the fellow podcasters. So make sure if you're in the Nashville region on August 26th that you come check it out and come say hi. Until next time, I'm Brian Sword. Thanks for listening.
Meeting you with a view to awaken, face to face in secret places, feel the chill. Nightfall covers me, but you know the plans I'm making. Overseas, could it be the whole of opening wide? A sacred wine, a mystery gaping inside. The weekend's wide until we dance into the fire. That fatal kiss is all we need. Into the fire, to fatal sounds of broken dreams. Dance into the fire, that fatal